Hi everybody, so this video is very important and it's dealing with the paragraphs, so writing your paragraphs for your rhetorical analysis essay. So the paragraphs for the rhetorical analysis essay need to be in AXES format. And so AXES is just a model for paragraph development in which your paragraph starts out with an assertion. So you're going to assert something about the effectiveness of the text. Then you're going to bring in an example from the text that proves that assertion. Then we're going to explain how that example proves that assertion. And we're going to repeat the X and E as many times as we need so that we have enough evidence to adequately prove whatever assertion we have. And then the paragraph always ends on significance. So you kind of think about why this assertion is significant in terms of your thesis idea. So we have to understand this in order to accept the thesis idea. That's that final line in your paragraph. So that's what AXES stands for: assertion, example, explanation, and significance. Let's take a look at what it actually looks like, and you can kind of read through this document if you want, but let's take a look at what it actually looks like for rhetorical analysis. So if you click on here is the sample paragraph for rhetorical analysis, and what I'm going to recommend that you do when you write your paragraphs is actually to kind of go through these different steps. So hopefully you will have already created your topic sentences or your assertions. So you have your assertion, and then your next step after that is to compile your evidence. So go back into the text and find as many examples in the text that helps prove that assertion as you can. So just list out all those examples. And then the next step is that you want to kind of think about how that example proves whatever your assertion is. And I'm going to highly recommend that you use key terms in your from your topic sentence in your explanation. So on this illustration here is our assertion. So by appealing to his environmentalist audience's dislike of modern farming practices, Rao was able to convince his audience that genetically modified foods could be a beneficial alternative. So there's the assertion about the text. And notice here we have in here the green, the blue, and the red, right, from the other video that we talked about when we're setting up our claim structure. So the green is the target audience. The blue is the effectiveness of the argument, which is in red. So here we have our example from the text. Note that the quote is tiny. Do you guys see that? So it's just a small quote. It's not this huge giant passage that's quoted. I couldn't get the whole thing, but it goes down to there. So it's a small quote. And note also how the explanation should be the largest part of the paragraph. Tiny example, huge explanation. Tiny example, huge explanation. Tiny example, huge explanation. Yours should strive to do the same. You know you're on kind of the wrong track if it's flip-flopped. If your support, your example is longer than your explanation. So you really want to kind of think about the majority of your word count in your paragraph should be you explaining how that support proves that assertion. So here we have our example, and I'm going to recommend, as I had said earlier on here, that we use key terms. So use the red, green, and blue when you're thinking about how you're going to be explaining that. So here we have the environmental audience's dislike, and so we've got distrust, environment, the current farming practices gets repeated. So you want to make sure that you are kind of thinking always about your claim, and then your explanation is how the claim supports your assertion. So I'm going to let you guys kind of go through and read these. I don't want to spend time in a video just reading this stuff to you, but pay attention to that as you're reading. It's how the explanation is really analyzing how this example proves this assertion. A mistake people oftentimes make is they just restate their example. So they just say it again in different language. So that's not doing the analysis part and the evaluation part. So we want to make sure that you don't just restate your examples, but you're explaining how it proves your assertion. Okay, and then the next step that we're going to do is, now that we've got, this is kind of like piecemealed together. So remember, at first we had our list of our examples, and then we went through and we spent time on each example explaining it. Our last step then is to merge it all together into a really nice paragraph. So as you are putting this in here, so let's say you're just kind of backspacing out and trying to make this look like a paragraph. Every time you move from one of these XE sections, you're going to insert a transition. Then you have your XE, insert a transition. So that's what I've done here in this next part of the illustration. The transitions are all in bold. Sometimes we have, a common transition there. For instance, remember when we looked at transitions, sometimes we have what I call custom transitions, and they're whole sentences. So this whole sentence moves us from one piece of support to another. So that's the transitioning that's happening here. That's all highlighted in bolded font. And then finally, we add that significance statement. A lot of people forget this. Don't forget this. If you're really striving for an A on this essay, you'll have good, strong significance statements. Kind of think about your topic sentence, think about your thesis, and just kind of talk about why that topic sentence idea or assertion idea was important to the overall thesis concept. And then we have our final AXES paragraph. I want you guys to note how long this is. So this is what we call a well-developed paragraph. If in your draft you realize that you've just got this little paragraph that's maybe only this long, you know that that paragraph isn't passing. It's missing one of these elements. Remember, with AXES, we got to have these 4 elements. So bare minimum, we need 2 pieces of support, right? So we have to have at least 2 examples. So that right there is 6 sentences. And if we're thinking about how much time we should be explaining, let me get back in here, how much time we should be explaining, right? How many sentences we have in here. You're looking for about 6 bare minimum. Hopefully you're at 10, 12. You're kind of thinking about nice, well-developed paragraphs, which is what we have here. Okay, you guys, I hope going through your paragraphs kind of step by step like this really makes the writing process a lot easier and kind of fun, I think, as well. I've had people who've actually gone through and color-coded their paragraphs as they were writing to make sure they're on track, and I highly recommend that you do that if you feel like in the past you've had a hard time with development of paragraphs. At least do that for this first essay, and once you kind of get the hang of it, you don't need to kind of take the extra step of color coding, but maybe on this first go around it's a helpful technique for you to do. Okay, you guys, we'll talk soon. Bye.